Good evening, it's Tuesday, the 8th of April, and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Heat wave warning. India issues heat alert and temperatures soar across northern states. Tariff breakthrough. EU proposed to eliminate all industrial tariffs on US goods to ease trade tensions. Genetic milestone. Colossal Biosciences announces birth of dire wolves and stunning genetic breakthrough.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Akhil Qureshi.
Good evening once again. The Indian Meteorological Department has issued warnings of extreme temperatures across several northern states this week. It has issued a yellow alert, meaning heat is generally manageable, but it can be dangerous for vulnerable states and populations.
India's northern regions, including the capital Delhi, are experiencing an unseasonal heat wave with temperatures soaring to unprecedented levels for early April. On Monday, Delhi recorded a maximum temperature of over 40 degrees Celsius, marking the highest of the season and exceeding the average temperature for this time of year by about 5 degrees. The India Meteorological Department has issued heatwave alerts for several northern and central states, forecasting temperatures to reach up to 42 degrees Celsius in the coming days. Authorities are advising residents to avoid heat exposure, stay hydrated, and wear lightweight clothing.
The South Korean government has approved June 3rd as date for the snap presidential election following the removal from the office of Yoon Suk-yeol last week over his short-lived declaration of martial law.
South Korea will hold an early presidential election on June 3rd, 2 months after the removal of former President Yoon Suk-yeol. In a meeting chaired by Acting President and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, Cabinet Ministers on Tuesday confirmed the date of the early election and declared it a temporary holiday to encourage voter turnout. The decision comes 4 days after the Constitutional Court upheld former President Yoon's impeachment over his martial law declaration last year, effectively ousting the nation's 20th president. Under the Constitution, a snap election must be held within 60 days of a presidential vacancy, with a date set within 10 days. While June 3rd is the last possible day to hold the election, it's considered a necessary period of time for sufficient campaigning and preparation. In 2017, following former President Park Geun-hye's removal from office, an election was held 60 days later. The National Election Commission Tuesday promptly confirmed the election schedule. It will accept candidate registrations on May 10th and 11th, before official campaigning starts on the 12th until June 2nd, the day before the vote. Televised interviews and debates hosted by electoral authorities will be held during this time. Overseas Koreans must register to vote 40 days before election day, and ballots for them will open from May 20th to 25th at embassies and consulates around the world. Early voting will be held the weekend before, on May 29th and 30th, from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. On the official election day, voting hours will be from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. To support a fair and transparent electoral process, the Interior Ministry will operate a fair election support situation room through election day. A nationwide mock exam for the November college entrance test has been rescheduled to a day later on June 4th. In an early election, the winner must immediately assume presidential duties without a transmission committee. In the 2017 presidential race, then President-elect Moon Jae-in took office straight after his victory was confirmed on May 10th, the day after ballots were cast. Until the leadership vacuum is filled, Acting President Han told cabinet members they must devote themselves fully to ensuring the safety of the people, restoring livelihoods, and responding to the ongoing trade war triggered by the United States.
President Donald Trump said that the US and Iran will hold direct talks over possible nuclear deals on Saturday. He also warned it would be a very bad day for Iran if no agreement was reached.
The world is watching as the United States and Iran prepare for what could be a pivotal moment in global nuclear diplomacy. President Donald Trump has announced that direct talks with Iran will begin this Saturday. Discussions he described as very high level and potentially decisive. Speaking from the Oval Office after a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Trump warned that if negotiations fail, Iran would be in grave danger. He reiterated that Iran must never acquire a nuclear weapon, calling any alternative to a deal a very bad day for Tehran. But the narrative from Iran painted a slightly different picture. Iranian foreign minister confirmed the talks but said they would be indirect and held in Oman. The talks come after years of rising tensions. In 2018, Trump withdrew from the 2015 nuclear deal, reinstating sanctions that crippled Iran's economy. In response, Iran has violated key provisions of the original deal, enriching uranium beyond agreed limits and amassing enough material to potentially produce several nuclear weapons. Despite insisting its nuclear program is peaceful, Iran has drawn alarm from international watchdogs and adversaries alike.
Donald Trump met with Netanyahu as new tariffs for the president is levying on Israel and the rest of the world are about to go into effect tomorrow. The US is also set to impose 17% of tariffs on imports from Israel.
The Israeli Prime Minister's meeting with the US Commerce Secretary on Sunday set the tone for his visit to Washington. Trade is top of the agenda. Benjamin Netanyahu is the first leader to meet with President Donald Trump after the announcement of his sweeping tariffs, which included a 17% levy on Israeli goods. The US is Israel's largest single trading partner. The Israeli government preemptively said it would cancel all remaining tariffs on American imports ahead of Trump's so-called Liberation Day, but it wasn't enough to exempt Israel from the announcement. It's Netanyahu's second visit to Washington since Trump was inaugurated in January. Back in Israel, protesters gathered outside Netanyahu's residence to up the pressure.
North Korea on Sunday held its first Pyongyang International Marathon in 6 years, hosting foreign runners in a reclusive country that has largely closed its borders since the COVID-19 pandemic.
After a 6-year break, North Korea welcomed more than 200 foreign runners for its Pyongyang International Marathon on Sunday. State TV footage showed athletes running through the Arc of Triumph and the Kim Il-sung Stadium in the showcase capital. This year, the winners of the men's and women's races were both North Koreans. The foreign athletes could only enter the country as part of a controlled tour organized by an exclusive partner.
The Pyongyang Marathon is an extremely unique experience as it provides an opportunity to interact with locals.
The number of visitors this year was scaled down more than 4 times compared to the last marathon in 2019, right before the country closed its borders for the COVID pandemic. The reclusive country has only started lifting restrictions in 2023. In February, some Western visitors were allowed into the remote city of Rason, but tours were suspended shortly after.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. In a move of escalating trade tensions, President Donald Trump has threatened to impose an additional 50% tariff on Chinese imports unless Beijing withdraws its 34 retaliatory tariffs by Tuesday, intensifying fears of prolonged trade war.
US President Donald Trump has given China 1 day to end the 34% retaliatory tariffs it imposed on US products last week, or he'd slap an extra 50% duty on imports from China. It's an escalation in a trade war that has sent global markets into a downward spiral and stoked fears a recession is around the corner. Trump gave his ultimatum to China at the White House on Monday.
If that tariff isn't removed by tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we're putting a 50% tariff on above the tariffs that we put on. So they've gone for years. They've become a rich country because of people, again, that were in the White House that allowed this to happen. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year they'd make on us on trade, and it shouldn't be that way.
Trump's long-promised round of global retaliatory tariffs were announced last week, with some rates as high as 50%. He has said they will help the US recapture an industrial base that has withered over decades of trade liberalization. On Monday, administration officials said dozens of countries had reached out to Washington in hopes of heading off the tariffs before they take effect Wednesday. However, Trump said he has no plans to suspend tariffs during negotiations.
Would you be open to a pause in tariffs to allow for negotiations?
Well, we're not looking at that. We have many countries that are coming to negotiate deals with us, and they're going to be fair deals.
Beijing has responded with anger to Trump's latest threat. The Chinese Commerce Ministry said Tuesday China will never accept the blackmail nature of the United States and said US threats were a mistake on top of a mistake. Trump said Monday his administration would open trade talks with Japan, one of Washington's closest allies in Asia. Meanwhile, the EU has proposed counter-tariffs of 25% on a list of US goods over Trump's earlier steel and aluminium tariffs. EU Trade Chief Maroš Šefčovič said Monday they're ready to negotiate a zero-for-zero deal with the Trump administration.
While the EU remains open to and strongly prefers negotiations, we will not wait endlessly.
The 27-member EU bloc is struggling with tariffs already in place on autos and metals. It also faces a 20% tariff on other products on Wednesday. And Trump has threatened to slap tariffs on alcoholic drinks from the EU. Investors and political leaders are still trying to figure out if Trump's tariffs are permanent or a pressure tactic to win concessions from other countries. And many investors are now betting that the growing risk of recession could prompt the U.S. Federal Reserve to cut rates as early as next month. Fed Chair Jerome Powell has so far indicated he is in no rush.
In a significant move to ease transatlantic trade tensions, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced the EU's proposal to eliminate all industrial tariffs on US imports, aiming to foster a zero-for-zero tariff agreement with Washington.
After the announcement of sweeping reciprocal tariffs imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump last week, countries are looking to negotiate a deal before April 9th, when the tariffs go into effect. The European Union, in the hopes of striking a deal with the U.S., said Monday that it has offered zero-for-zero tariffs for industrial goods. The announcement was made by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who stressed that such deals were done successfully with other countries in the past. The U.S. and the EU were close to removing tariffs on all industrial goods a decade ago during the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership talks, but this was ultimately scrapped by Trump in his first term. In response to Trump's automobile tariffs, the UK government said Monday it would relax electric vehicle sales targets in order to help its domestic auto industry. The ban on selling new gas and diesel cars will still come into effect in 2030, but automakers will now have more flexibility on annual targets. Currently, 28% of new cars sold in the UK in 2025 must be electric, as the target will rise annually until 2030. However, automakers will be given more freedom on how they meet their annual targets. This means that if they don't sell enough EVs in 1 year, they can make it up by selling more next year. Also, a penalty of £15,000 or $19,000 per vehicle sold that does not meet the latest emissions standards will be cut to just over $15,000. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba held phone talks on Monday, where the Japanese leader voiced his disappointment over the tariffs. Ishiba told Trump that Japan has been the biggest investor in the U.S. for 5 straight years, and that his tariff policies could hurt Japanese companies and their investments. During the 25-minute call, the two leaders also agreed on constructive dialogue on the matter, with Ishiba sending a team to negotiate with the U.S.
Chief Justice John Roberts temporarily halted a lower court's mandate requiring the return of Kilma Albergo Garcia, a Maryland resident mistakenly deported to El Salvador, granting the Trump administration time to appeal the order.
In a late victory for the Trump administration, the Supreme Court today paused for now a lower court order that Kilmar Abrego Garcia must be brought back to the U.S. by tonight. The administration acknowledges an administrative error was behind ICE agents mistakenly deporting Garcia to a notorious prison in El Salvador during a roundup of alleged gang members. Court documents show Garcia entered the U.S. illegally in 2011 and was later detained. A government informant identified him as a member of the violent MS-13 gang. Abrego Garcia's attorney denies he's a gang member. An immigration court ordered him deported, but withheld deportation to his home country, El Salvador, citing threats to his life there. Now his wife is desperate to bring him home.
I want to tell him that I miss him and that I'm fighting for him.
Earlier today, an appeals court ruled against the administration, writing, "The government has no legal authority to remove him from the country without due process." But then the Supreme Court issued a stay as it considers whether to vacate or uphold the return order.
Thousands of supporters of French far-right leader Marine Le Pen gathered in Paris to protest her recent embezzlement conviction and 5-year ban from running for office, turning the event into a populist demonstration of defiance.
Day of protest in Paris. Supporters of Marine Le Pen gathered to show their support for the far-right leader.
It's not right that someone is banned from running for president. She still represents millions of people, and 3 judges ruled that she will not run again.
Le Pen was convicted of embezzling EU parliamentary funds and sentenced to an immediate 5-year ban from holding public office. The decision will prevent her from running in France's presidential election in 2 years unless she can get the ruling overturned on appeal.
And so, my friends, never forget the reason they attack us so harshly, with so much disloyalty. Never forget. They're only doing this for one reason. We are in the process of winning. You are in the process of winning.
Vous êtes en train de gagner!
Over at Place de la République, the leftist Unbowed France party stressed that for them, the national rally is playing a dangerous game. For now, all Le Pen can do is wait for her retrial. Legal officials say they will speed up the process to ensure the Court of Appeal hears the case in time to deliver a verdict before the 2027 presidential election.
Recent studies revealed alarming levels of microplastic pollution in major European rivers, with scientists detecting an average of 3 microplastics per cubic meter of water, raising concerns about environmental and public health impacts.
The Seine, the Thames, the Elbe, Europe's biggest rivers are filled with plastic pollution. 9 of them were analysed by scientists backed by the Tara microplastic mission, whose findings highlighted the plastic dumping dilemma. Microplastics are among the main pollutants impossible to see with the naked eye. They are synthetic textile fibres that come from washing, or particles that spurt out under car tyres or when unscrewing the cap from a bottle of water. They're invisible and yet heavily impact ecosystems and pose a risk to human health. Pre-production plastic pellets called nurdles are also being dumped into waterways. Small and cheap, they're used in the manufacture of plastic bottles, grocery bags or polystyrene foam containers, and are often washed down drains or spilled during transportation, posing a threat to wildlife. With no penalties for companies dumping these pellets, an estimated 10 trillion plastic nurdles find their way into marine ecosystems each year, according to the Environment America Research Center. The Tara microplastics mission also reported that some 80% of all of these plastic particles end up in the oceans. Scientists say this is a wake-up call and are asking for a major decrease in the production of plastic in Europe.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. In a groundbreaking de-extinction effort, biotech company Colossal Biosciences announced the successful birth of 3 direwolf pups, Romulus, Remus and Khaleesi, using DNA from ancient fossils combined with genes from 3 closest living relatives, the grey wolf. Take a look.
A species once thought gone forever is now padding the earth again. The direwolf, a top Ice Age predator and a pop culture icon thanks to Game of Thrones, has been brought back from extinction in a first-of-its-kind scientific breakthrough. Dallas-based biotech company Colossal Biosciences announced the birth of 3 direwolf pups, claiming they are the world's first successfully de-extinct animals. Using ancient DNA from 13,000 and 72,000-year-old fossils, the team genetically modified grey wolf cells, its closest living relative, to match direwolf traits like a broader skull, stronger jaws, and thicker fur. 20 gene edits across 14 targeted genes were made before cloning the modified cells into donor embryos, which were successfully carried to term. Now, Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi, the first of their kind in millennia, are thriving on a highly secure 2,000-acre facility, monitored by drones, security, and live feeds. This project marks a milestone for Colossal's larger de-extinction goals, which also include the woolly mammoth, dodo, and the Tasmanian tiger. The successful birth of these direwolves signals what might be a new era in conservation.
After tornado-devastated Tylertown, Mississippi, drone pilot Jason Miller utilized thermal imaging technology to locate Linus, 11-year-old lab mix, missing for 10 days, facilitating an emotional reunion with his owner, Curtis Bush. Take a look.
The tornadoes keep on coming. Curtis Bush of Tylertown, Mississippi, not only lost his house in a twister, his 11-year-old lab mix, Linus, went missing too. After 10 agonizing days, drone operator Jason Miller joins the search to bring Linus home.
It's going to be really hard to see in that.
But Jason won't give up.
Please let me find this dog.
Finally, the drone spots something.
Oh my gosh, is that him?
You bet it is.
Yes!
An ecstatic Jason calls Curtis with the good news.
I found him!
You found him?
I found him, buddy!
Well, that's a wrap from all of us right here on World News Tonight. Stay tuned as we've got Prashantha Gunavardhana, who will join you shortly with Nightly Business Report. I'm Akwal Qureshi, and we're leaving you with the likes and the scenes of North Korea holding a cooking festival to mark the late leader's birth. Thank you for watching.